Hey guys, what's going on? Steven back again, and I'm back with another Walking Dead video from Ty Swell. And the topic for today's video is Andrea, Lost in Translation, The Walking Dead Universe. So yeah, sadly Andrea did get lost in translation, from her comic book story to how she was in the show, and then kind of not really knowing what direction to go with her. She said in different interviews and stuff like that she was supposed to ride in on horseback and save Woodbury. I think she was supposed to be a love interest for Rick. I don't know if that was like Frank Darabont's idea, because I'm sure when Frank started the show he probably had a whole vision of, all right, this is how the show's going to go, this character's going to do this character's going to do that, these characters going to get together, and sadly Frank wasn't around very long. Sadly, they let him go. So he did all of season 1. So I'm sure he probably started to, set things up. And yeah, did he do a couple of episodes of season 2, or was he let go before season 2? I don't remember. I can't remember if he did a couple of episodes, like 2 or 3 episodes of season 2, and then he was fired midway through season 2. But either way, I'm sure, kind of like Star Wars, they set things up, another writer director comes in, goes in a whole different direction, and then another writer director comes back in and tries to pick up said pieces. Snoke, oh, who is this new mysterious Snoke character and stuff like that? Is that Darth Plagueis? Ooh, did they bring him back? Oh, nah, he's dead. Guess it doesn't matter who he was. Whatever. So set it up, hand it off to someone else, goes in a different direction. Yep, probably what exactly happened, to Andrea. Because, look at Rick and Michonne. It took them, 3 seasons until they finally got together? What was it, season 6, I think in the second half of season 6. I'm pretty sure it was after it was after the No Way Out, because Jesus, they just met Jesus and stuff like that. They brought him back, and then remember he broke into their room and Rick, we need to talk. And then both of them jump out of bed. So it took them 3 seasons for Rick and Michonne to finally get together. So, I'm sure had Frank stayed around, the Andrea, Rick probably would have blossomed more, because it really didn't have a chance to bloom or anything like that. And then, like I said, she was supposed to ride in on horseback and save Woodbury. That didn't happen. I think she even said, she even bought a house down in Atlanta, to be closer to filming. But then they were like, hey, so here's your death scene. Like, what? I just bought a house down here to be closer to film, and now I'm getting killed off? Okay. So, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Maybe his video will explain it a lot better. So, yeah, let's just jump right in and check it out. So, here we go.
Alright folks, welcome to the second installment of Lost in Translation, the series where I explore iconic characters from the Walking Dead comics who were done dirty in the TV adaptation.
Oh, what's the first episode? In this installment,
I of course will be focusing on Andrea, a character changed so drastically that referring to her as an adaptation feels generous. It would be an understatement to say Andrea's comic counterpart was a fan favorite, as she was a skilled sniper, protector of children, loyal ally, and tough as nails. Basically everything you'd want in a survivor. But throughout her run on the show, it became clear this was a wildly different take on the character, which for many fans, myself included, just didn't work. So today, I wanted to discuss why Andrea was so beloved in the comic, why she fell flat in the show, and what could have happened behind the scenes that led to such a drastic change.
Because they did a little
if you end up enjoying this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you hit that like button and drop a sub to see more content like this. Now, to understand why I believe Andrea was lost in translation, you need to understand just how great a character she was in the comic. Officially introduced all the way back in issue 3, Andrea always stood out as one of the best written women in the early issues. If you're familiar with the early comic run, it's pretty apparent many of the female characters were often written in roles that revolved around romantic subplots or interpersonal conflicts. Even Michonne,
like what
who
they
was
do with most
introduced
characters
as a
later
badass
on.
fighter, was often drawn into these
Oh,
sort
we
of
don't know what to
narratives
write for
during
this
the prison
character.
arc, and
Love
later
interest.
deeply traumatic stories that felt
Rosita.
intended for shock value rather than character development. He definitely improved in this aspect of his writing as the series continued to evolve, but from the get-go, very little unnecessary drama or out-of-pocket storylines surrounded Andrea's character. We meet her just as she loses her sister Amy, but rather than letting her grief define her, she channels it into developing skills to protect the group. While characters like Carol and Michonne were entangled in a romantic triangle
we did start
with
to see some of
Tyrese,
that
and
in
Glenn and
season
Maggie
2,
were constantly
I wanna
disappearing
protect
from
the
the group
camp,
to hook up,
so
Andrea was posted up in the prison
kinda got a
guard
little bit of
tower,
that.
honing in her skills as a sniper and looking out for those suffering in more ways than one. All while reeling from a recent, nearly fatal attack by notorious murderer Thomas Richards that she was luckily able to fend off, but left her physically scarred for life. This doesn't mean there wasn't any focus on her relationships, however, as rather early on, she and Dale get together and stay together as they legitimately fall in love, which may sound a bit weird to you TV-only viewers, but actually comes off as really
that
sweet and
was
admirable in the comic. There's
kinda
no
there.
strings attached either.
But I'm
Andrea
sure when,
truly loves Dale, and that's that.
Dale wanted
no
to
cheating
leave,
and mostly no drama,
when Dale
which
left,
was a huge breath of fresh air
that
when compared to some of the
probably
other
threw a
side
wrench
plots
in
going on in the
things.
prison. If anything,
Yeah,
Dale
'cause
was
they
the
fired-
drama starter, as he was
they fired
extremely
Frank,
insecure about
and
the
then
age
Dale
gap.
wanted to leave.
Although, to be honest, this insecurity is what added complexity to their relationship. The love Andrea held for others didn't end there either, as come the deaths of a couple named Donna and Alan, the two would take in their twin sons Ben and Billy and raise them as their own. And as the series went on, these positive character traits only became ever the more prevalent as, by the prison massacre, she single-handedly repels the governor's initial surprise attack while taking a bullet skimming across the head, all in the name of protecting the people she loves. Even after being pressured by Dale to leave their allies in the face of another attack, Andrea persuades him to double back in order to help once again at the risk of her own safety. And over the next few chapters, she would continue to stand her
this would've
ground
been
in
cool to
believing
see.
these were the people they were supposed to be with, even when Dale's frustrations peaked. However, come the Fear the Hunters arc in Volume 11, Andrea would face her greatest challenge yet, as she would lose her son Billy at the hands of his unstable brother Ben, before losing Ben to Carl as well covertly the next
So that's
night,
kind of
who
the-
believed
the
he was the only one with the strength to do what had to be
Mika
done.
and-
without even getting a chance to grieve, Dale would be kidnapped and
What was
mutilated
her
by the
sister's
Hunters
name?
before
Mika and,
revealing he had been bit the night before. And just like
remember.
that, Andrea lost everything she had gained in this horrific world. But once again, she didn't let this grief consume her. She may have been angry over
Lizzie.
what happened
Lizzie,
and
there we go.
participated in the slaughtering of the Hunters, but she was still emotionally grounded and capable of pushing through the fog. And eventually, after accepting Dale's death and finding a home within Alexandria, Andrea and Rick would find comfort in each other and begin one of the longest lasting relationships in the series. And all throughout No Way Out, the Savior arc,
Okay, so
and
then
All
by
Out
then,
War, her sniping skills and
Andrea
dedication
would
to her
have Michonne's
friends would
spot.
remain instrumental in their prosperity as she served as Rick's moral backbone through these hard times. We don't
So it must
die
have been
was her
something
motto,
going on
as no
behind
matter
the
the
scenes that
circumstance,
caused-
she would remain alive, as that's what they do for
Caused
the
her to
sake
leave
of
or
the
whatever.
people they loved, even coming out on top against an armed savior who got the jump on her and nearly ended her life. And following the arrest of Negan and a 2-year time jump, Andrea would settle into her position as Alexandria's co-leader along with her husband, who never actually proposed to her, before taking up arms once again come the Whisperer War. However,
Damn, she
Andrea's
got, like, the
dedication to helping others is what
Poncho
eventually led to her
cowboy hat.
downfall, as while leading the Whisperers mega horde to the coast, Eugene would nearly fall victim to the dead before getting rescued by Andrea, who unfortunately suffered a bite to the neck in the chaos.
Ooh.
And what followed was possibly the saddest issue in the series, as every character we've come to know gets the chance to say goodbye. And even though she was the one suffering,
So it's kinda like
she still
Rosita's
looks
death.
out for Rick on her deathbed by
'Cause everybody
demanding
kinda came
he
to say
keeps
goodbye to
fighting through
Rosita.
this world. We Don't Die was now a joke to her. But what she didn't realize was that thanks to everything she's done to get the Coalition where they were, her memory would stay alive through everything they do going forward. And as she took her last breath, Rick would be forced to put her down before facing the people of Alexandria, who were more than willing to pick him back up in the aftermath. Andrea's
That would have been a
influence
touching
throughout the
thing to see.
series would continue even after her death, as Rick would severely struggle with his grief, even sleeping on her grave on some of the harder nights. But in the end,
Damn,
she
that
died a
would've been
hero and left
interesting
behind a
to see.
legendary legacy,
You
with
know, that
Carl
would've been
eventually
dark.
naming his daughter after her in honor. However, what's kind of funny is that my personal favorite Andrea scene actually doesn't feature her in the flesh at all. It comes at the beginning of issue 169 after her death, as Carl kneels over her grave with Lydia by his side. He goes on
So
to
it looks
tell
like they
her the
kinda took
story of
some
killing
parts
Ben,
and stuff
but
like that,
here,
like
he begins
the sleeping on
describing
her
how
grave
when
was
he
probably
finally
like
told her years later
seeing
he
the
was
ghost
the one
of
that killed him
Lori.
after growing so close after
Sorta.
the war, she began to cry a lot. But as she wiped the tears away, she looked Carl in the eye and told him she loved him. And from that moment forward, he began calling her mom, as a parent's love is unconditional. Without getting too much into my personal life, this interaction of being accepted by someone who isn't your actual parent hit extremely hard and solidified Andrea as one of my personal favorites in the entire series. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, as Kirkman felt the need to write an entire letter to the fanbase apologizing for her death, but also justifying his decision. Now, comparing comic Andrea to her TV adaptation. Well, let's just say it's a very different story.
Yeah,
I'm
it
sure
is.
most of you are
What the hell?
thinking everything I just described doesn't apply to the TV adaptation, which you would be correct about. But just to be
I'm
clear,
sure this was
this is not a dig
Frank
at Lori
Darabont's
Holden
idea.
in any way. She's a great actress that truly did her best with what she was given.
Yeah.
Now, from the
She did-
jump,
she did
TV
fine.
Andrea was defined by her grief and unpredictable nature more than anything. We first meet her in Season 1, Episode 2, as she raises a gun to Rick's head before even considering the consequences. Like in the comics, Andrea was close with her sister Amy, but after Amy's death, the TV version spirals into despair, as she convinces herself there is no hope left in this world, which is an understandable reaction, but it already sets her down a very different path. And going into Season 2, her growth would continue to feel disjointed, as she would have moments of strength, like when she attempted to take up arms to defend the camp, all
She
while
did say she wanted
simultaneously
to,
attempting
you
to
know, defend the
abandon the
camp.
group along with Shane, which again was highlighted as something comic Andrea would not do, even when Dale pleaded with her. Although I'll admit
And this is
this
what happens
seemed
when you
more like
hand
an
it off to a
internal
different
struggle
writer.
rather than sloppy writing. And speaking of Dale, instead of their passionate love story that defied the status quo, the two had a somewhat father-daughter-like relationship, with Dale at times coming off as clingy and overprotective, while Andrea often came off as harsh and bitter towards him before cutting that story short altogether come Dale's premature death.
Yeah,
At
because he wanted
times,
to
it
leave
can
the
be
show.
really hard to get a grasp of her moral compass as she experiences what the loss of a sibling feels like, only to downplay the severity of Beth's condition to Maggie, which comes across as insensitive and somewhat hypocritical, as she should know what death does to those left behind. And by the end of Season 2, she's separated from the group during the invasion of the farm and is ushered into a completely different role than what we saw in the source material, which was actually the nail in the coffin for her character, as come
She
Season
joined the
3,
governor.
she's at the forefront of the Governor arc, where she falls in love with him and begins trusting his word over Michonne, who kept them both alive throughout the entire winter. The governor was
And
very
I think
clearly
by now,
corrupt and hiding secrets
this
that
is
were
when
visible
Scott
if you were
Gimple took
looking.
over,
But Andrea just couldn't see past
writing.
the rose-tinted glasses.
So once again,
or at the very least,
handed off
didn't
to
want
someone
to
else
for the
now,
majority of the season.
and now
Michonne's
going
line, "You chose a warm bed
different direction."
over a friend," basically sums up her character perfectly this season, as that is truly what happened. She didn't trust Michonne's word or instinct, and for that, many people died by the governor's hand, including herself, as by the time she comes around to seeing Philip's true horror, it was too late. He had sicked a walker onto her while restrained, resulting in a bite to the neck, which interestingly mirrors her comic counterpart's death despite the issue releasing years later.
Comic arc.
The show had tried to redeem her character in her final stretch of episodes by having her nearly assassinate the governor while attempting to get back to her real friends. But by that point, the damage was already done for most fans. And with that, Andrea went out with a whimper. Outside of Season 2, there were very few moments displaying her skills as a sharpshooter. She was very rarely loyal to her allies, as she attempted to abandon the group on numerous occasions before actually doing so with Michonne, who was her closest post-outbreak friend. And although she was close with Amy, Andrea's grief after her death closed her off emotionally. So unlike her comic counterpart, she never really regains that warmth or protectiveness towards children. Or at least doesn't get the chance to. Without basically any of her comic counterpart's skills, personality traits, or story, it's really hard to say these are even the same characters at all. A lot of the differences could be excused if TV Andrea was interesting on her own, but the truth is, she just wasn't. Some parts of Season 3 make her feel like more of a plot device to get the story going rather than her own character. So with all that, what the hell happened? Why were these changes so severe? Well, the answer to that is sort of complicated. You see, a large portion of the issues with her character came down to a change in showrunners.
There you go.
With Frank Darabont, a lot of these negative traits were still there. I'm not going to pretend she was perfect from the start and became bad in Season 3, because that's just not true, as we've discussed. The difference, however, was the planned growth the character would experience that was mutilated and cut short.
Yep.
Andrea, without a doubt, was flawed in the beginning.
Frank probably had a vision, an idea,
Frank Darabont has gone on to state this frustration with the character was intentional, as he had plans to eventually evolve her into her comic counterpart. Even talking about embracing the passionate love story between her and Dale, just with a bit of a different approach that would show her grow as a person from this destroyed individual to a hero. Laurie Holden originally signed on for 8 seasons under Darabont's direction, and her death in Season 3 was actually a last-minute decision to spice up the Season 3 finale by Glenn Mazzara, the showrunner who replaced Darabont.
Oh, there we go.
Which obviously came as devastating news, as she was completely blindsided by the decision. Believing she would have a job for years to come, she was in the process of buying a house in Georgia only to be shafted early, which is a story we would hear again in the future. So it seems, behind the scenes, Season 3 threw her so off course that she became expendable when she should have been vital to the series. Keep in mind, Andrea under Darabont's vision only had a handful of episodes to develop before his firing, and Frank is someone who likes to slowly tell his stories. So with this change of direction, she didn't even get the chance to get into those aspects of her character, which is such a shame. I can see how Andrea may come off as perfect in the comic from the jump. So in my mind, perhaps Darabont thought that type of character had to be earned over years of development, and her endpoint would maybe hit even harder if she was unlikable in the beginning. It's clear she was never going to be a one-to-one adaptation, but nobody really ever was.
No.
Dale was grouchy and pessimistic as hell in the comics, but in the show he was sort of the moral compass. So as it stands, I believe Andrea was lost in translation because the new showrunner didn't understand Darabont's original vision for the character, while only seeing the negative reception from fans, and failed to steer her back on course before prematurely ending that potential altogether. Under Frank's leadership, it's quite possible she could have evolved to be a fan favorite just like her comic counterpart, even with her less desirable traits in the beginning, such as wanting to abandon the group. But unfortunately, we live in a timeline where many mistakes were made along the way. Thankfully, however, the role Andrea plays in the comic was split between Sasha and Michonne in the show for the adaptation's later seasons. And although it was quite a bit different, I think some aspects, particularly the relationship between Michonne and Rick, works just as well, if not better. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Do you agree with most of the points I made here today, or do you think there's another reason as to why she was lost in translation? I'm excited to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, and let me know what other characters you would like to see featured in this series. But that's going to do it for me today, folks.
Oh, there's one on Jesus. Okay, so that must have been episode 1. Damn, I missed that. I'm going to have to watch that one another time. That's pretty interesting. There's a video here. It was pretty interesting. Yeah, there you go. Change of showrunner. That'll, you know, that'll do it, you know. Frank had a vision, but since AMC, you know, fired him, whoever the second showrunner came in went in a completely different direction. And, well, I guess by the time that second showrunner was done, Gimple stepped in and did whatever he could. I think, did he take over then? No, was it still a second showrunner? I don't remember. I think it might have still been the second showrunner. But yeah, bought a house down in Atlanta, signed on for 8 seasons. Hey, guess what? We're killing you off. What? Okay. I guess. Like you said, not the first time we've heard that one. Carl. Still one of the most dumbest things they've ever done, you know. Let's kill off Rick's son and then give him another son. What a great idea. I know, right? I know he's got a son, but what if we replace him with a new son? There you go. Instead of having 2 sons and a daughter, let's just have 1 son, a new son. What the fuck? What the hell? Dumbest idea ever. Oh, God. Yeah. Well, there we go. It is what it is. You know, the show is done and over with. There's no going back. No changes can be made. I mean, it still would have been really cool to see, you know, Frank's full vision. Like, if he took over and just did the whole season, just him, you know, this is how the show is going. This is where the show is going to end. And then just seeing his entire vision, what it would have been like, instead of like, oh, here, I'll start the show, and then you take over the show, and then you take over the show, and then you take over the show, you know? Kind of like a little hot potato here and there, you know? Well, I got this started. Oh, never mind. I'll go in the different direction with that instead. Here you go, your turn. You know what? I'm going to forget what you did, and I'm going to go back in this direction here. It's like, what the hell? You know? Like I said, Star Wars. You know? Like I said, Snoke. You know? One of the big things. Who is this new mysterious evil villain and stuff like that? Is he a Sith? Is he something beyond a Sith? Is he Darth Plagueis? Was Darth Plagueis still alive? I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out in the second movie. Oh, Kylo killed him. Okay, guess who really gives a shit on who he is then, or who he was? Doesn't really matter anymore. He's no one now. You know. So, yeah. Well, there we go. It is what it is. So Andrea, lost in translation. Yep. And then, like I said, of course, you know, with Frank getting fired, Dale wanting to leave, because as soon as Frank got fired, he wanted off the show as well, because him and Frank are good friends. So I'm sure that definitely threw a wrench into things too. So, yeah. It is what it is. So, but anyways, that was a really cool video. I liked it. I thought it was good. So, yeah, it would have been cool to see like some of those shots and stuff like that, some of those scenes, you know, from the comic and stuff like that. But, oh well. So, anyways, let me know. What did you guys think about the video? Did you like it? Did you not like it? You know, just leave me all your thoughts and comments down below. I will have to check out this first episode video he did of Jesus. Once again, yeah, he was definitely lost. Also, never saw the cool fight scene with him and Negan or anything like that. And I think what is it? He like swats a grenade back or something like that with his hand, or kicks it back or something like that. That would have been cool to see. Nope. I mean, he did get a really cool death. He got like a whisperer death. So, I mean, that was kind of cool, but still not as good. I mean, yeah, his death was iconic, but it is what it is. So, anyways, on that, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. That'd be awesome. Remember, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media. Links in the description box below. And other than that, just stick around. More videos are on the way. And I will see you guys next time.